Hi guys, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes here. I'm still dealing with Nick Fuentes, and I think the part that um, is kind of getting me is this stuff about white nationalism. Now, for me, this is quite frankly an alien concept, and the way it's used, quite to me, doesn't seem to make that much sense. It's just my opinion. So right off the bat, of course, when you say white nationalism, there are racist implications. And the problem is, starting with Nick Fuentes. Okay, if you've listened to some of his interviews where he speaks for himself rather than other people putting words in his mouth, he is very clearly not a racist, and he makes it very clear that he's not a racialist. All right. And he points to another gentleman, Thomas Rousseau of the Patriot Front, as being more like what other people complain about. Okay, so now I'm looking around the room and I'm saying, okay, where are the white nationalists? All right, and I will admit I am not an expert on the subject. I'm still learning about it. There's the Wikipedia entry, and they list tons of names, tons of groups that are associated with what they think is white nationalism. So, given the nature of Nick Fuentes' responses, I become a little suspicious about what we will call the utility and accuracy and truth of this term white nationalism. The other parts of this that we will consider is that when you use a phrase like white nationalism, you're talking about some notion of exclusivity. You're talking about some notion of what was the persecution, the idea of persecuting those who are not white, plus the idea of supremacy is implied. Yes, and in the Wikipedia entry, you have this dance that's going on where they're kind of moving towards, well, it kind of like this, and it kind of overlaps with this, and it might be related to this. So I don't think there is a clear definition. I would be very hard pressed to find somebody who would be considered a white nationalist in the purest sense that it's intended. All right, so let's just take the phrase, and forgive me for interpreting it my way, but white nationalism would suggest the belief in a nation for white people and nobody else. Okay, that would be white nationalism. You're going to, again, there's no, let's, you're going to find this as a fringe idea, in my opinion. You're going to find certain groups that might espouse this, but guess what? They don't have a lot of members. They don't have a big following, and they don't have traction of any kind that you or I would recognize. Okay, but you have liberals who just can't help themselves. They need something to hate, and so they accuse people who disagree with them of being quote white nationalists. It's just a nonsense phrase in my judgment. Now that said, not that I'm going to spend a lot of time on this, but we do have, there's a book on white nationalism, a collection, I think, of essays and interviews by Carol Swain. I happen to respect and admire Carol Swain, and I would, take seriously anything she has to say. But at the same time, you got to be clear on just what you're really talking about. I mean, in some sense, white nationalism is just a modern version of calling somebody a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Does it make any sense? You don't see white nationalists burning crosses. Uh, I mean, this the whole idea. It's just, and by the way, if I would go back, I mentioned Thomas Rousseau as well. So Nick Fuentes sort of distances himself from Rousseau. You listen to an interview of Rousseau, and he's kind of distancing himself from what would be normally thought of as racist concepts. So where are the racists? Unless you want to call them liars. But hey, that seems to be the easy way out. You need clear proof, if you're being honest, of clear statements and actions that would be associated with racism. Now, just to say it, in my opinion, when you're using something like DEI to prevent white people from being hired, white men from being hired, that sounds like racial discrimination, and I'm surprised there haven't been more lawsuits on it. Maybe they're coming. So when you have something like that, I would not even begin to compare the imagined white nationalist with these practices that are exercised against white people. All right, you think you're being fair, but you're not. Anyway, um, see, to me, white nationalism is a liberal. I think I'm using the right word, shibboleth. It's a phrase that makes them feel good because they feel like they've identified a boogeyman that they can point to. But, there should be more evidence. There should be more signs. There should be more public expression, whether it's in social media or someplace else, about this thing that's supposed to be white nationalism. It just so I'm calling you guys out, all you wacky liberals. You're going to have to do better in terms of actual evidence of racial discrimination with a nationalist flavor, as implied by this phrase "white nationalism." I don't see it, but I'll try to get back to this, and I will try to get that book by Carol Swain and get a better understanding of what this is, because it's the same problem I just mentioned. They throw up these inflammatory terms and they don't quite stick. All right. They don't, there should be somebody to point to, there should be some action to point to, some event to point to. And, as one person said, the demand exceeds the supply when it comes to racism in this country. And I think when you try to throw around this term white nationalism, you kind of get into the same problem. So, to be continued.